Liam blushed deeply. Harper, on the other hand, burst into loud laughter. "Why are you making the poor boy blush? Shame on you." Aunt Ellie, the cook, lightly swatted the assistant with a towel. Harper laughed even harder. "Why are you so scared of girls, Liam? You'll never get married at this rate, and it's high time." The guy blushed even more, quickly finished his meal, and rushed out of the dining room, jumping into his truck. Liam worked as a farm driver. A good guy, diligent and kind, but terribly shy of women who loved to tease him mercilessly. He wasn't handsome, but he wasn't ugly either. Tall, broad-shouldered, the kind girls usually like. However, he could barely talk to them without stuttering. Liam lived with his sick mother. Aunt Zoe was already bedridden. In the early 60s, this disease was rare, but she knew that her time was limited. She tried to find a wife for her son by inviting friends with their daughters, but nothing came of it. The guests are at the door. Liam is in the backyard. One day, driving his truck to the district center, he spotted a woman standing on the road, waving her arms, demanding he stop. Fearing he might hit her, Liam halted. The girl quickly opened the passenger door and hopped in. She turned out to be a young gypsy. "I need to go downtown, handsome. Why is he so gloomy? Do you want me to cheer you up? I can tell your fortune. A good guy like you is destined to be happy." "Trust me, handsome. Why are you so sad? Tell me about all your troubles. I know a spell that will fix everything." Before he knew it, Liam had poured out his entire life story to the gypsy. How his father had fallen through the ice 6 years ago in winter, got sick, and the doctors couldn't save him. How his mother was now ill and counting her remaining days. How he couldn't marry because of his fear of women. The gypsy listened attentively, gently stroking his tanned muscular arm with her slender hand, then asked him to stop. That evening, Liam didn't come home alone. "Mom, this is Evelyn, my wife," he announced, bringing the gypsy girl into his mother's room. Aunt So gasped at the sight of the girl, and Evelyn, hands on hips, firmly declared, "Now, Mother, I will be the mistress here. If you don't interfere, I'll feed and care for you. But if you cause trouble, you'll have yourself to blame." She turned to Liam and sweetly sang, "Come, darling, I'll feed you, let you rest, and warm you with my love." Aunt So tearfully begged her son to get rid of the snake, but Liam wouldn't hear any of it. As if bewitched, he listened to Evelyn, looked into her eyes, and begged for her affection like a puppy. He shouted at his mother, accusing her of ruining his life and not wanting his happiness. One day, Evelyn snuggled up to him and cooed, "My love, soon I will give you a child, a son." Liam was over the moon with joy, kissed Evelyn, and became even angrier with his mother for not loving his wife. His mother didn't live much longer. The heartbreak caused by her son hastened her already brief remaining time. Aunt So was buried, and a week later, without even marking the 9th day, Liam and Evelyn vanished. Liam sold the house and left with the gypsy girl to unknown happy lands. Scarlett sighed heavily and added the last logs to the stove. Life was not easy without a man in the house. She had to deal with all the hard things alone. When my husband was around, it was a little easier. Even though he was a famous slacker, he still did some things. But after he left Scarlett for his mistress in the city, leaving her with their fragile little Piper, life turned into an exhausting struggle. Scarlett learned to cope on her own, but there were many moments when tears flowed down her face, and sometimes she wanted to scream in despair and not just whisper a prayer. She and her daughter lived in a small old house on the edge of the village. It was a particularly cold autumn that year, and they started heating the house early. In the late afternoon, after returning home from work and checking her daughter's homework, she remembered that she needed to chop more wood. Sighing heavily, she put on a quilted jacket and went outside with an axe in her hands. The evening was quiet, with only the distant barking of dogs in the village. Just beyond Scarlett's yard, The forest began as a dark silhouette at dusk. It wasn't scary at all. Scarlet knew every tree by heart. But then she heard an unusual sound amidst the rustling of the already bare branches. Unleashing the dog, she followed the noise. Thomas ran ahead, barking sharply. As Scarlet approached, she saw a young man swaying, holding onto the trunk of a birch tree. She called out to him, but he didn't respond, not even lifting his head. As she drew closer, she saw his head and clothes were covered in blood. Scarlet supported the stranger under his arms and led him to the house. He didn't resist. At first, Piper was scared of a strange man, but after her mother scolded her, she quickly brought water and a towel. Scarlet put the man on the bed, washed his wounds, and ran off to Nurse Amelia. Amelia examined the patient, said that Scarlet had done everything right, and noted that another doctor was needed, but it was impossible to get to the city now because of the roads washed out by rain. All she could do was get vaccinations and show how to dress wounds. After seeing the nurse off, Scarlet quickly chopped some wood and sat down next to the stranger. He didn't speak, staring blankly ahead, but he did drink the herbal tea Scarlet offered. Eventually, he fell asleep, and Scarlet watched over him. He wasn't handsome, but there was something familiar about him that made her feel a strange comfort in just looking at him. Whether it was pity or something else, she felt a firm resolve not to let anyone take her foundling away. The next morning, Scarlet sent her daughter to school and asked for a day off from work. She was a valued employee, so they granted her request without issue. She rushed home, filled with a wild enthusiasm, and began to cook soup, porridge, even pies. She checked on the stranger frequently, and when she saw he had opened his eyes, she quietly approached and asked, "Do you have any pain?" She was thrilled when he finally responded quietly, "My head hurts, and it's spinning. Who are you?" Gradually, Scarlet found out that the man didn't remember what had happened to him, nor his name, nor his past. But when she listed various male names, he flinched at the name Thomas, so they decided to call him that. Thomas made a quick recovery, and just a few days later he was up and helping Scarlet around the house. He even helped Tanya with her homework, showing special abilities in mathematics. Thomas was humble, quiet, but very kind and hardworking. Scarlet began to put on makeup, tried to dress more attractively, and talked to Thomas with tenderness. He couldn't take his eyes off her either, and once even dared to take her hand. That night, the dog could not get settled in his kennel for a long time, feeling that something unusual was happening in the house. 3 months have passed. Thomas found a job on a farm, although he had a special love for cars. "Thomas, my love, I won't let you go anywhere now, and I won't give you to anyone," Scarlet said one morning, snuggling up to him. "Am I really so dear to you?" Thomas laughed. "Even more than dear. And also, we're going to have a baby. I feel it's a boy." Thomas was overjoyed, showering Scarlet with kisses, but then suddenly sat up in bed, grabbed his head, turned pale, and began to cry. Scarlet was frightened. "What's wrong? Aren't you happy?" I remembered everything. "Scarlet, my love, you don't need someone like me. I'm a terrible person. I believed a lying fox, and I killed my own mother before her time." Liam wept bitterly, recalling his real name. He told Scarlet about the gypsy, about her bewitching love, about how he didn't listen to his mother and was rude to her, even though she was terminally ill. He recounted how the gypsy tricked him, pretending to be pregnant, persuaded him to sell the house and move to her family, and how, after arriving at the camp, he remembered nothing more. If it weren't for Scarlet, he would have been lost, and it would have served him right. Scarlet listened to him, wiping away her own tears, hugged him, and quietly said, "I see that you have sincerely repented. You have a kind heart, Piper, and I have fallen in love with you, and you've already become a family for us, and I'm carrying your baby under my heart. I'm not letting you go anywhere now. If you realize your guilt, it means that you will never repeat such a mistake. You'll be a loyal friend and a good husband. 5 years later, in a small village cemetery, by an abandoned grave, stood a man, a woman, a teenage girl, and a little boy who looked at the unfamiliar place with fear. The boy hugged his father's legs and watched with surprise as bitter, burning tears flowed from the eyes of his strong, brave father. Liam had found his happiness after all, but the path to it had been much harder than the sweet promises of the gypsy had foretold.